Hello everyone.
Hello.
I am Caitlin, an advisor at IG Advisors, and welcome to Leadership Lab Notes. This is, we're all very excited, this is a limited edition video podcast series all about leadership. I am joined today by my wonderful co-producer and co-host.
Hello, I'm Elena, an intern at IG Advisors and podcast producer for this wonderful space.
And just to provide a little bit of context, at IG Advisors, we are a strategy consultancy. We work with the philanthropy, business and non-profit spaces for social and environmental change. We are coaches, we are mentors to social impact leaders, and we are also trainers. We run a leadership lab program, which is a 6 weeks training for social and environmental impact leaders. So we'll be popping the link in the description of this video. And for today's inaugural first episode of the podcast, we are talking about non-hierarchical leadership and joined by some wonderful guest speakers. So do you want to introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be here. So I'm Harriette, I'm one of the advisors at IG, so that's one of my hats and that's where you might know me from. I'm also a trustee of a small charity based in London, and I'm also a mentor for young people as well. So there are a few of my hats that I want to just cover today when I'm coming to this topic. Over to you, Charly.
Hello everyone, also very excited to be here. I am Charly, I'm an associate here at IG. I joined the team 6 months ago now, so really excited to be here speaking about this. Yeah, that's me.
Let's get cracking then.
Amazing.
So let's dive into the topic right ahead. What exactly is non-hierarchical leadership to you?
I think, shall I go first? I think for me, it's when important things like decision making and power is actually shared across everyone. So it's not having one person making all those decisions and holding all the power. It's when you actually bring in everyone from the organisation or whatever initiative it is you're working on and making sure there is that kind of inclusive access to decision making.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think also for me, it's about realising that there are different roles that are all a really important piece of the puzzle rather than better roles and, you know, superior and inferior roles. So everyone can be at a different stage in their journey and at a different stage in their career at a specific company or initiative, as you say, and still be playing a really important role in that space.
Yeah, there's so much in what you just said that I really loved, and something I want to pick up on is this idea that we have so much experience beyond just our professional working experience. We all get up to our own stuff outside of work, and for me, non-hierarchical leadership also values who we are beyond our job role, which I think is really powerful. And there's also an ethos of just respect and care and feminism that I really, really appreciate in non-hierarchical leadership. So if you have ever used respect or integrity or feminism to explain your values as an organisation, non-hierarchical leadership is something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it plays out in different ways. There's not just one right way of doing it. It's figure out how it works best for you and your organisation, get people to come together, just have that discussion with them.
Because when I first started thinking about this topic, I was thinking quite literally and in terms of non-hierarchical or hierarchical structures as such, but I think there's something super important in the care piece that you mentioned, and just the first and the core, I guess, of creating a non-hierarchical environment is creating a workplace culture where you feel able to participate in decision making and cared for, basically.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. I think a culture of trust and openness is absolutely key.
Yeah. And I feel like as an intern, I experience this a lot because I'm technically at the bottom of the pyramid, but when I'm in places where there's no hierarchical leadership, then I feel like I'm valued and my ideas are valued and my intelligence is valued beyond the fact that I'm just starting, or the fact that I'm just starting brings into the table a different perspective that
Exactly.
within the spaces of care and respect is valued.
And you're a leader in this, but you're a leading producer of this space.
Exactly.
Which, this actually leads us really nicely on to the next question, which is, where have you experienced non-hierarchical leadership in your lives, and what has that actually looked like and felt like in practice?
That's really funny because for me, I don't think I've ever seen this before I joined IG. I think I've heard people talk about it, I've heard people talk the talk, but actually walking the walk is a very different thing. Coming from a grant-making background, people wanted to practice non-hierarchical leadership, but actually it didn't really play out very effectively at all. So I think for me, just working at IG Advisors, I've really seen it work really effectively. As you just said, Eleanor, like as an intern, you feel really part of the leadership team as well, which you really are. So yeah, I would say here at IG, I see it.
Look, Harriette. She wasn't paid to say it.
No, I really wasn't. I mean it.
I'm gonna beat the same drum. I mean, I obviously come from I'm speaking from a perspective of I've been at IG Advisors not for a super long time, so I have the benefit of comparing two workplaces back to back and very, very recently in my career. And I haven't experienced this before coming here. So yeah, I think there's a lot of, as you pointed to, there's a lot of narrative and kind of promise around having power and having autonomy and having your say and being valued, but whether that actually plays out, it hasn't in my experience. So yeah, so far my time at IG has been my main kind of source of experiencing that.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point about the gap between, there are lots of people who love the idea, but I get asked a lot of questions around, well, in reality, isn't it really annoying? Like, how are decisions made? How do things get done if you don't have hierarchy? But I would actually argue the more you share power, the more that gets done, because you have less bottlenecks and you have more decision makers at your organisation that can be trusted to be amazing people and make amazing decisions.
Yeah, that's so true, because it's not necessarily saying that every single person in the organisation needs to see a specific project or like make the decision. It's about sharing out that decision making and figuring out like who is really interested in this area, who might have relevant experience or just wants to learn about that specific thing, and letting go of the power and allowing that person to be empowered and just lead on that specific thing. And you don't have to then see it, you can just allow them to go and do their thing, and I promise you good things will come out of it.
That kind of goes back to what I said before about acknowledging different roles rather than kind of better roles, and acknowledging that someone might have the experience, knowledge, or just genuine enthusiasm and passion to lead on something, as opposed to the person that might naturally sit in that leadership position.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally agree.
Absolutely. And just, one other thing I want to say on that, and this is something I noticed from working at IG. I think for the first time, rather than me feeling like I'm working for an organisation, I actually feel like I am the organisation. And we are like a collective, which is what we always say. And together we decide what happens. We decide our strategic priorities. We decide who's going to be leading on what. And you feel like you are the organisation rather than like, oh, I'm just working for that company. So it's really empowering and really motivating.
Yeah, and I have to say that resonated really deeply with me sitting outside of the organisation. I don't know about you, but when I listened to the team speak before I became a part of the team, I could really like feel that collective, and it's really powerful to be in a room with, because it feels so trusting and like everyone is so bought into what we're doing, what you were doing, and
Oh, that's nice to hear. It's always good to hear.
Just a quick provocation, because we have a little bit of time before we move on to the next question. We've spoken a lot we've spoken very positively about non-hierarchical leadership.
Yeah.
Have you experienced any challenges? Are there any contexts where you think actually this leadership isn't relevant or isn't the most appropriate way of going about things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to just go first all the time, but I can't think of a specific challenge, but I would say that a lot of people who I've spoken to and a lot of organisations I've worked with who are trying to take up non-hierarchical leadership, I think often have been quite afraid of making mistakes, and that has actually prevented them following it. So I think don't let perfect be the enemy of good, Brené Brown. And I would just say, like, as I said before, have a conversation with your team and like just play around with things, try and experiment with different ways of like bringing people into the conversation. And yeah, just know that we don't always get it right. Like, yes, IG is amazing, but we don't always get it right. And actually, Emily, our CEO, just reposted a blog that she wrote on leadership and things she's learned from it. And in that, she says, like, these are all the things I've had to learn and I haven't got right first time. And that is just part of the process. So there are going to be lots of challenges, but as you can hear, like, all the benefits, they outweigh the challenges massively.
Yeah, I also think a big mistake that I see people make is that, like, let's go non-hierarchical, and then it's like one or two people who make all of the decisions about what that looks like in practice. And I'm like, that's not exactly how this is meant to work. So if you're gonna take a non-hierarchical approach, then all of the decisions about what that looks like, how that gets implemented, who's brought into that, they have to be made as a collective. You can't establish that ethos from the get-go, basically, is my top recommendation.
Yeah, it's kind of like non-hierarchical doesn't mean unstructured.
Yes.
There still needs to be structure behind it of how you make decisions, and
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
that's something that you need to establish with everyone else.
I would say also potentially a challenge thinking about other people maybe approaching this and maybe trying to embed it in your organisation or your initiative is the shift from, I suppose, a traditional kind of structure and method of leadership into that non-hierarchical space and approach could probably be a bit challenging. I mean, I know even just myself coming from a space where that wasn't the case, again, totally agree, all of the positives definitely outweigh the negatives, but I would say one area of challenge potentially is not knowing sometimes where accountability sits in some cases. So, you know, if you're leading on something and you're not used to being in that position, it's kind of just figuring out the way that that works best for you and your team as a collective, as you say, because it's not the traditional, okay, I need to report back to this person and they need to review this and then they're going to make the final call. So yeah, I would say that that's just more of like something to get used to and something to figure out.
For sure. And we've spoken a lot about the kind of processes of establishing and doing non-hierarchical leadership well. I think it's also worth mentioning the soft skills and like the emotional intelligence and vulnerability that is needed to, as a leader who is used to a more traditional hierarchy, opening yourself up to listening to other points of views and potentially views that are quite different to yours, and maybe even feel in conflict with yours. That takes a lot of bravery and a lot of vulnerability and a lot of emotional intelligence to navigate those conversations and how you relate to them. So that is the other skill that I think is super, super valuable if you're trying to do this.
Yeah. And I think finding a mentor or a community that you can be part of, where as a leader you can actually talk through some of those challenges. If you're someone who struggles with that emotional intelligence piece or showing vulnerability, because a lot of people just haven't come from that background. So I think having a space where you can really talk through some of those challenges is absolutely crucial.
Sure.
And I do think that we use non-hierarchical structure also in the community organizing that I'm part of, and we use consensus based to make every decision, and that can take a lot of time because people have different opinions and sometimes those clash. But it's also about the piece of like care and respect, and then we all know that we're here in this space to make decisions that are best for everyone. and kind of understand when, you know, you share your opinion and people hear your opinion, but then we need to find a solution together. And kind of like, it's not always what you think is best that will pass,
Yeah.
but that is also okay.
Yeah, 100%. Those like shared values, shared vision that are going to be your guiding star when there is differences and divergences. I love that.
Yeah, it's really good.
So we've touched a little bit about this already in this chat, but what advice would you give to organizations that are trying to switch towards a hierarchical leadership approach?
I'm going to let someone else go.
Yeah.
In the spirit.
Yeah, hierarchical.
I think I'm gonna sound a bit repetitive, but I think I want to make this as the first point because I think it's the foundation, is make sure that you have that open communication and open kind of collaboration channels and the sense of care and respect to really set that like base of possibility. And I think one of the things that I've experienced here at IG that has been really good is the feedback culture that really supports the non-hierarchical structure, I think, because it really fosters responsibility in everyone. It feels like you're being supported every step of the way, even though you're kind of leading and taking charge for yourself. So yeah, I think a really strong feedback culture and being able to take on that feedback as well as someone that's coming into that structure.
Yeah, 100%. I second that. I think trust is the number one like basic thing that you need to have. I would say, as Caitlin said, like lead with vulnerability and have that open feedback loop and know that this is an experiment and it's going to have to shift, adapt, iterate as you go on. So what you start with probably won't be what you end with. And it is kind of a continuous process and cycle, and you'll just figure out what works best for you and your team. A really practical thing is you can use something like a RACI matrix, which is responsibility, accountability, consulted, informed. I got there eventually. So use something like that as a team and like co-create that and figure out together like who's going to be responsible, who needs to be consulted, and that's a really good way of like creating the structure that Elena just said. So that's really practical. That's like the ethos and fundamentals. And also join our lab and learn from a community of people who are trying to do this, and also our amazing team who we know how to do this and put it into practice.
Yeah, I think just to add some really practical advice, if you're trying to establish your new leadership strategy, I would encourage you to think about, first of all, who needs to be around the table, who is involved in this non-hierarchical approach. Why are you doing this? Why is this important to your organization, your culture, your values? Because that's going to help everyone stay grounded. What does this mean for you in your context? Because as Harriette mentioned earlier, this can look different depending on your organization and your goals. How are you going to implement it? And then also, so what? So what? How will you know that you are doing this effectively? What will it be allowing you to unlock? So if you could answer all those questions. Yay! Would you add anything, Elena?
I think that like all of these things kind of go back to having this like culture of like trust and in making decisions as well. 'Cause when everyone can make decision, then it is sometimes tricky. But at the same time, because of that, then if somebody wants a second set of eyes, can ask anyone, and then we collectively make decisions together and we support each other. So if someone makes a mistake, it's okay, you know, and we move on and we find a solution together.
I love that, and I think that's such a beautiful reflection to end on. So, thank you so much for watching our inaugural Leadership Lab Notes podcast episode. We have many more exciting episodes to come. If you enjoyed today's video, please like, comment, subscribe, share on your socials, tag us in your posts. We'll drop our LinkedIns in the description of the video. And as Harriette very nicely plugged for us, do consider joining our Leadership Lab program. It is a 6 weeks training program where we will take you through all things leadership and apply by end of September 2024 for an early bird discount. And that is it.